Hello everyone, welcome to the Teaching English webinar for teacher educators. This month's guest is Professor Gilly Salmon, and we'll take a closer look at the e-moderation skills, frameworks, and AI support in online teacher education. My name is Shirin Soyoz, and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you all so much for joining today's event. Before we start, I'd like to share a number of quick housekeeping reminders with you. While waiting, please share with us in the Q&A where you are from. If you work in pre-service education, teacher education, type pre-service. If you work in in-service, type in-service in the Q&A. So you will have a chance to ask questions during this event. And please use the Q&A to ask our presenter your questions. We will be using the chat for announcements. The link to the certificate will be provided in the thank you email that you will receive this week. Finally, this session is being recorded, and a recording of the webinar will be available on our Teaching English website in the next couple of days. So let me introduce our presenter today. Professor Gilly Salmon is a pioneer in digital education, learning innovation, and transformation. She is the creator of the Five-Stage Model, e-activities, and Carpe Diem learning design, shaping online and blended learning. She is the author of the seminal book, E-moderating, and she continues to advance the future of education, integrating pedagogy with emerging technologies. So I'd like to invite Gilly now.
Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I'm just going to share my slides to get us going. So as I said, here's the schedule. It is fairly fast paced, but we've got two opportunities for questions to come in. Just try and relax and concentrate on what I'm saying and the slides that I'm offering you. All the follow-ups, all the colleagues have got and will be sending off to you later. So just try and make at least one note as we go through something that you are going to do or try out as a result of spending this precious time together this morning or this afternoon. So that's really where we're at. So the whole webinar is 75 minutes. We've done 5 minutes of it now. Just to say that 103 of you filled in a short questionnaire for me in the last few days. I was hoping there'd be one or two absolutely burning questions you wanted of me, but actually your confidence is very varied. And as you can see, there's some people that are very confident about moderation and others less. So it's quite a mix, but it doesn't really mean that you've got the opportunity both to learn from each other. And those who are setting out really start with very well-rehearsed and well-researched frameworks. You don't have to invent it from scratch. Everything you want is here. I also asked, what's your attitude towards using, the AI? We cannot ignore this. We wanted to use it constructively and for the benefit of students. And as you can see, it's, again, quite a mix. But I noticed that around 35 people actually were saying I use it often and find it helpful. So you have got colleagues around you who are just a little bit further out and experimenting in these areas. Now, this isn't about ChatGPT, it's about frameworks that will help you, but I will be mentioning very briefly how you can use it at each of the stages of the frameworks. And last but not least, there was a free text area. This is my very approximate distribution of all the things that people said. We could do a seminar a week, I think, on them from now onwards, but quite a range, really. So it is important that you try and work out, what you really need to get out of this to give you more confidence and to get you moving. So try and actually have a notebook with you and make one or two key actions that you're going to take from tomorrow as a result of this, because what everyone was wanting was quite varied, as you can see. So these were my learning outcomes. This is what I'm hoping you'll get to understand really frameworks that I've been working on for more than 30 years now. So they're not something I invented. You see so many little things that come out that are quite interesting, but this is researched and has been crowdsourced and researched by literally thousands and thousands and thousands of educators in different places throughout the world. And then what I want you to do is try and identify what's useful to you, because there are practical frameworks for your work as an e-moderator. And it will support your own professional development. In other words, you're gaining confidence, and it will enhance your learner engagement, which of course everyone is worried about. And then you will actually, again, once you understand the 5-stage model, actually use it, try it, design with it, try it. And that will extend your skills and promote deeper learning. So it's a win-win situation. Even if you try, as we get later on, little pieces of interactive work that you moderate it, I'll show you how to do that. And then, of course, as I said, I've put purposeful ways to just integrate AI into your moderation. I think when you start out, the best thing to do is to delegate routine tasks to the AI and then keep your human presence. So that's our aim. Okay, let's get going. So first, setting the scene. Now, I'm going to flash this up fairly quickly because I don't want to frighten everyone, but I've just completed in the last 12 months a complete revision of the skills and competencies that we need as e-moderators. And sure, some of them will be normal and familiar to you, but others less so. So just maybe make a note of one of these that you'd like to try out and find out a bit more about. And you can also ask Syrian and colleagues, you know, can we have some more about one of these? Or I can certainly recommend more reading. So your main task, regardless of what is going on around you, regardless of who you're teaching and where, is the facilitator of learning, the guiding, mentoring, and supporting students as they explore and take it forward. And to do that, it is really a good idea if you can use some up-to-date technology, smart tools, digital platforms. And one of the main ways of using that, we think now, is to personalize learning and create deeper engagement. So it's all about this idea of deeper engagement leads to better collaboration, better learning, better motivation. So again, you can't do all of that, it's massive, but if you do one or two things, you'll start to see what works for you. And we really no longer what we might say the font of all knowledge. We are instead the creator of resources, selecting, adapting and organising to meet diverse learners' needs. And in doing so, we need to keep ourselves at the forefront of uniquely human. Now, I know you're all humans, and I think by now you probably know I'm human. But there is this idea that a lot of people feel uncomfortable about losing the human touch. Now, this doesn't mean to say you can't use technology, but you need to keep absolutely at the forefront the emotional and the empathy, and also model resilience yourselves in the face of a very changing technology world and the ability to adapt. Now, the main way to do this is not to push yourself forward, but enabling peer-to-peer learning. And one of the things I've done in your follow-up handouts is to focus on peer-to-peer learning. So hopefully you'll see how this can go across physical and virtual spaces and combine the two. You do need to use data. I'm still surprised that a lot of people are not getting data from the platforms that they're using, and they're therefore are not getting the best they can to offer personalised and growth to their learners. Just, you know, maybe one of your challenges from today might be just to find out a little bit about the data and analytics that are available to you and how you might be able to predict who needs extra help early. And of course, we're all lifelong learners. I think you need to model that. Not one of us can possibly stand still, not any of us now. So you do need to sort of look at your own skills. And of course, pedagogy, digital fluency, and we have to say inclusive practices, because that's what makes us human, again, to work with others and respond to their needs. And I suppose number 8 is similar, an equity advocate. All students, regardless of background, need to have meaningful learning opportunities. And you can't understand every single culture, but as language teachers, you're going to know how challenging this area is. So maybe just choose one of those and think, okay, I'm going to have a bit of a work on this. And just one more point from me, the very smart educator designs their learning once and delivers many times. Now, I think in your context, being, English teachers in online contests, you actually know this, but it's actually a time shift in a way. It's a matter of spending time before the students are there to maximize the design and then be able to deliver it many, many times. And I'm going to give you a framework where you can do that. So, hope everyone's still alive. I'm going to give you 2 main frameworks for using e-moderation that make you more effective. Thanks for the thumbs up. I know you're still alive and listening. Practical frameworks for e-moderation. The first one is the 5-stage model. The second one is called e-tivities. I'm going to explain both of them to you. Some of you might have come across the 5-stage model before, some of you not, but I hope you'll all get something out of it. It's a key concept. I've been researching it for a long, long time and adapting it as we go through. And I believe if you adopt it, it will change the way that you teach from now onwards. Now, there's lots of references for this. You're going to get these slides, but if somebody wants to take a picture of that, that's on my website. There's a lot more about this on there. So if you want to refresh it either now or any time in the future, I keep that as up to date as I can. And the interesting thing about it is it is translated into different languages. If your language isn't there, perhaps you'd like to do one for me, but I think there's about 18 different languages that the basic model has been translated to in there. So there's 5 stages to it, okay? And each one actually has 3 components, and that's what I'm going to explain to you. But about this seminar is about your role, the teaching role. So I'm going to mention particularly your role as a teacher in creating a really productive learning experience at each of these. And stage 1 is the student's access and motivation. Now, access includes technology. Of course, it's the technology access, but it also means access in the wider sense that they feel comfortable taking part, they feel ownership over it, they can work with others and feel safe to do so. So it's quite a challenge at this point. Now, I'm going to say something about motivation. I'm not going to give you one trick that will get everybody motivated. Actually, you can't simply apply motivation to somebody else, but you can create environments where their own motivation will come forward. And there's one basic thing to say about motivation at this stage. And this 5-stage model was invented before anyone had heard of social media, Facebook, or anything else. And we always made sure that whatever we did, we were inviting other people to respond, even if it was a tick or a minor comment. And that, of course, has turned into something we think is normal now, that you like on social media. Well, as educators, we knew that before they did. So be prepared to revisit that idea. Hope that helps. Number 2, what you're building here are peer groups. It's your role as a facilitator is to enable them to work together. It's not to submit yourself as the font of all knowledge. So in in research terms, this is what we would call the socialization phase. And this is what a lot of us find more difficult. Now, if you've been taught, you'll always know whether you've got a good facilitator or not, because the majority of the time you spend talking to your peers rather than listening to the teacher. And that, of course, is what you're aiming for. So we're talking about peer groups. There's quite a lot that has to go into making this happen, but that is the next stage. Unless you get the stage 1 access and the start of motivation going, you're going to lose half of them already by stage 2. So you really need to see it as a scaffold and spend time on each one before you start offering them activities for the next. And then stage 3 is what we'd call cooperation. It's really important for learners at this stage to understand how to cooperate with each other. It's not collaboration. I'm going to come to that in a moment. And I think if you understand the difference between the two, you'll be more successful with the scaffold. So cooperation is probably every learner will have their own agenda and their own goals, but you can request them to work with each other and they will start to see the benefits of that. Now, you know this anyway, of course you know it, but when you're online, you need to create activities that actually make that possible. So you need to be aware of how that's happening. And then after that, of course, you can then go into collaboration. Now, collaboration, the definition there is that groups work together with a joint goal. So rather than saying, if you do this activity now, speak to your partner, speak to your group, work together on this little activity, they'll start to see the benefits of it rather than you imposing that on them. Then when you get to the collaborative stage, you can give them more complicated things to do, or you can give them discussions where different groups have different goals, those kinds of things. Try it, because you'll see gradually that you are building up and you'll get more people with you engaged at that point. And I know that often this is what you're aiming for, but you do need to go through each of the other stages first. And then stage 5, this is what we call metacognition. If you've got all this going on, it's of great value to get learners to look back and see that scaffold that they've been on themselves. And that's the start of what we'd call metacognition, which means they're learning how to learn. They're reflective, all the things we want them to be, which is difficult to simply teach. You can do that by getting them to understand that they have been on that journey and how they responded. And the more you put online, the easier it is for them to look back, of course. So always have a kind of an output or a comment from you on every activity that you do, so that they can go back towards the end. And then you're actually setting them up to be more successful, mature learners. And every time you or someone else teaches them again, they will have that additional metacognitive path. So that's the model. And really, if you just try and have a go at this, I promise you it'll work, but don't skip stages. Make sure you give activities for each of those stages. I've just stuck this in here. I know you're teaching English, so you're fine talking to me, but you may actually, you can see if you go into this page here, that's the model translated. And as I say, I put another plug. If the language you want isn't there, I'm always open to just a little bit. And it's just that model again, but translated into the language. Right, everybody still all right? Still with me? Okay, now I'm going to go through each of these stages in a little bit more detail with the role of the e-moderator. Thanks for all the thumbs up and the hearts. It's very helpful. Otherwise, I'm just talking to my teddy bear here. Okay, so I'm going to go through it in a bit more detail now. So stage 1, you remember access, both technology and all the other ways it goes. and the start of creating a motivating environment, rather than I don't do this by insisting they do it, doesn't work. So the educator's role at stage 1 is this welcoming host. But it's also quite a good idea at this point to emphasize that learning is with others, that it's not a teacher to student idea. So what we're starting to do now is chatbots to greet participants, check their technology readiness, and sort of there's a whole range of AI tools for personalizing onboarding messages or interactive facts. So if you're interested in that, just explore them and try one or two. Generally speaking, the students respond well to that. I'm not saying you're not going to have your presence there at all, but you might be able to offer them a lot more personalization. It's worth a try, okay? I hear the screams coming through, but just try it. And then really you can then put AI support throughout with reflective journalism journaling tools. There's some lovely journaling AI tools that work on the same principles as ChatGPT, where they feel they are getting minor feedback, not replacement of you, but just as an addition. And don't forget to start investigating what learning analytics you can use, so you can very much earlier target people who are struggling. You don't have to wait to the first assessment even. So number 2, online socialization. This is where you're going to start the peers working together. Don't give them too difficult things to do, but allow time and space for the individual voices to emerge. So one of the metaphors here is the kind of a gardener, you know, allowing things to grow, encourage the identity building, light sharing activities, like find someone who's got something similar to you to share, or lives in the same location, or is working in the same company. You're really going for quite positive stuff with psychological safety at this point. So you can do AI icebreaker prompts at this point. And there's some nice, you know, icons to get sentiment analysis. It's really, really quick. And it's really good to start monitoring how people are feeling. So that will help you at this stage. Okay, we go on to number 3. This is where your teaching skills come in. I mean, you probably noticed that you're not really teaching as you go through levels 1 and 2. And some people really do feel uncomfortable about that. But actually, you will get all your students with you and find the teaching and their learning much better if you've done those first 2 first. So this is where you're a weaver, really. So you're weaving together contributions, actively scaffolding their sharing of ideas. Of course, you can tell when things are wrong. And I know with language learning, you have to do that a lot. But you're bringing your professional perspective. And it's also a good idea to bring in new dilemmas and news and things, get them to really talk to each other about at this point. But your main role is to weave and summarize their contributions together. Now, weaving means you can spot things that they may not see, and summarizing means that you acknowledge their contributions and make connections between them, between what learners have contributes. And this is your chance to teach, to add extra value, give extra resources. It's a really good idea for motivation purposes if you can mention either groups or individuals who are contributing well. So the AI support here, curation tools. I always have something running whatever I'm teaching, with news articles. You can build little wikis or Padlets for relevant resources. And when we come on to activities later, you also can use that for finding sparks to start a dialogue. I'll explain how to do that. And I definitely now use AI for summarizing discussion threads. So I always used to do it you know, by word and then searching. I now put it into ChatGPT, summarizes it. I drop it into Word, make it my own, top and tail it. And so every discussion that you have online has got a neat summary at the end, and that will help people to go back and revise. Promise you, it works really well. Definitely saves you a lot of time. Saves me probably at least maybe an hour and a half a week doing that, which is valuable. And it's better than I can do it. The students like it, so try it. Okay, we're at number 4. So if you like, the philosophical base of number 4 is really you're getting them to construct knowledge in their own context rather than deliver it to them, which is what you've been doing up until now. So this is, once you can see people starting to collaborate, you can do much more with them. You can guide their co-creation, you can give them problems to solve. But essentially, if you've got complex, meaningful tasks, and you'll all have things that you'll think, oh, only if I could give them that, but they're not ready. Try it at this point. Definitely for what you're teaching, excuse me, for what you're teaching. Sorry, I'm going to take a drink of my water here. Too much talking. There's some lovely co-writing and brainstorming areas. You know, go beyond, start investigating some of the AI support. And you can also find some, in ChatGPT will create little scenarios for you. You just got to learn how to prompt it to do what you want. It's not that difficult. And it will give you lovely little scenarios and problems to solve. And you just check it before you give it to the students. But on the whole, it works pretty well once you've learned how to do it. And who remembers what number 5 is? It's the metacognition, the development and reflection. So you can really quite openly be a coach for metacognition. You know, promote reflection on achievements, on assessment, and don't forget to make sure they understand how they're learning. But you do really see some students blossom when they're given this opportunity, and you're helping them to become self-aware, lifelong learners. I mean, really, the things that will stay with them for the rest of their lives. So again, I remember mentioned at the beginning, try and get some building of reflective journaling tools with AI prompts to get them to do it. And get the AI to give progress on learning. Both those things that you can use and they can use. Okay, so I'm slightly ahead of myself, but we're going to go to any QAs. If you put any questions or want to put any questions in now, Andrew's going to have a look and let us know. Andrew, do you need me to put my slides down to do this?
Hi, Gilly. You don't need to.
Okay.
Yeah, we can. But if you like, yes, here on this slide we have.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yes.
Have you got any yet?
Yes, yes. And one comment. So one of our colleagues, very experienced e-moderator also, Christiane, says, such a pleasure to see you live. When training new moderators, we refer to your 5-stage model all the time. So,
oh, lovely.
and yes, thank you so much. We would love to follow up with you. Okay, first question. As e-moderators, we often find ourselves creating resources rather than just curating them. Do you have any tips for making those materials really resonate with our trainees?
Yes, I think when you're doing the resources, try and work out which stage of the 5-stage model. I was trying to stop that thing jumping and I don't know how to, because it might be rather annoying. I think I might just go back to that one. Yeah, so what I was saying is you've got resources, think, oh yeah, this is a bit of material I want to use. Try and think about how it would fit in the 5-stage model and do a little bit of planning on that. If you want to know how to do a storyboard, if you look on that Gilly Salmon website and look under Carpe Diem Design, it will tell you how to create a storyboard with the 5-stage model so you can actually go through all 5. And then when you've got that idea, work out, you'll know whether actually it's a lightweight brainstorming with your colleagues or whether it's something quite complicated. You'll know where it would fit. And then you will need to write detailed instructions to make sure they understand it's something they do rather than what you do. And that is coming next in the activities section. So just hold fire on that. I promise I'm going to get to that bit.
That's very nice. Yes, great to hear that. And another question, what is, I mean, in terms of planning, so considering the 5-stage model, what is the role of an e-moderator during the planning phase of a webinar?
Right. Well, it varies. So sometimes if someone's developing a course, they will develop all the activities in advance. So there's nothing to stop you doing that. But I think on the whole, a lot of your course is already prepared for you. Am I right in that?
Depends on the context, I think.
It depends. Well, if possible, you design your own activities before the webinar starts, and then you can put the instructions up for everyone. If you can't do that, there'll always be some point at which you expect some interaction, then you prepare it for that space. So I suppose it depends on the role. Myself, if I was going to teach a course, I would want to at least see the design in advance so that I could intervene. But I don't know whether in your context that would always be possible, would it?
Yeah, it's a question from one of our attendees. So, but yes, that's I think sensible approach. About the the stages, could you please help us with the key differences in the progression between cooperation and collaboration in the 5-stage model?
Yes, it's a really good question because it is the challenge. So cooperation, the main difference, which is subtle, I know, is that you'll find learners are still really in pursuit of their own personal goals, whatever that is. And for most of them, it will be to pass the course, won't it? You know, to pass the assessment, to pass the tests. And you'll find at level 3, even if you've done 1 and 2, that there's still really, you know, quite understandably, most interested in how they're doing. But at 3, you will start to say, if you work with others, they will help you in pursuit of passing the test. But they'll still be there. And if you do a few of that, you'll start to see people really get to know others as they're working with them, to value other people's input, be prepared to help other people themselves. And that's the point at which you would determine collaboration. And for example, what I normally do is my first activity when I'm moving from level 3 to 4 is to have a big scenario and divide the scenario into different sections and then get different groups with a small goal, which is shared between a group of people. So that it's not just, oh, how do we pass the test? How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I submit my assignment? All the other 101 things that you get. But instead, for a little while, get them to understand that they need to work, collaborate with others, which is the main meaning of collaboration, in order to achieve an outcome. And then maybe snowball that. So the group presents something, and then you will comment on how it all fits together at the end. and you will find that you need to spend a bit of time on level 1, so their motivation is there, level 2, so they're getting a light socialization with each other, and level 3, even for cooperation to work. And then you'll need to spend a little bit of time on working with others, so they start to see the benefits and the motivation for themselves. Otherwise, when you get to collaboration, some people will do it and some people won't. And the people who are doing it will complain about the people who are not, because it's not fair, etc. And so the move, if you like, between 3 and 4 is quite important. Now, whoever asked that, I hope that makes sense to you.
Is it like, for example, from individual goals moving towards shared goals?
Well, they'll still have the individual goals to pass the course as well, but you're giving them small shared goals, and you're also encouraging them to develop beyond passing the test and starting to see the benefit of working with others, because that's a life skill that everyone is going to need in wherever they're working. You know, the benefits of working with others, working remotely with others, working with others from different cultures, constantly learning by working with others. And what you want to do is to open their minds to that, and that is collaboration. Yeah, is that any good as a start? I think one of the handouts has got more on that in actually as well.
So these are also uploaded on our website under Gilly's webinar, so you will be able to see the recording. Finally, Gilly, before we move on, how can e-moderators identify when participants are ready to move from one stage to the next?
Well, I gave a few clues on that. I think you're looking for at least one contribution at each stage, preferably more. So, for example, you need to give them things to do at level 1. For example, it used to be that everyone used to make sure they filled in their profile, didn't they? And often the questions in the profile were quite intrusive, which we now wouldn't consider appropriate, like, are you married, or where were you born, and so on. And it is quite important not to do that at the beginning. You want to encourage people to find their online identity. So the sorts of activities that work well at the very beginning are that giving them little activities to read and speak to one other person about something that's in the news that's relevant, that's cross-cultural or in their own country. One thing I do, and this is with master's level students doing cognitive psychology, is we always take a picture of what's outside our window, share that, and talk about it, or of the desk of where they're working. Now, for some people, that would be the corner of the room with kids around. For other people, it might be a nice view. It's their choice what they share rather than a demand. And you want everyone to contribute something there. And another activity that works particularly well when you're moving them from 1 to 2 is they can take a picture of their journey to work, something on their journey to work that's interested them, things like that, so that you're using a little bit of technology that most people have got, but not enable them to choose. And at socialization phase, you do activities, and I'll show you some examples of where they, for example, we usually do something on buying Coca-Cola. Where did they buy it? What price was it? And it leads on to a whole range of other things that people start talking about quite freely. You let that run because they learn so much about other people's cultures in that way. So it is a bit of a mindset change for you, the kinds of things you do first, rather than give them great big lists of what they've learned and reading lists and all those sorts of things. Allow this to happen in the early stages, and then you'll find the cooperative and collaborative stages come much easier. Have I answered the question there or not?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Okay.
It's so if we have time for one more question,
Yeah, sure.
um,
Sure.
also about the use of AI in the e-moderation, we use AI tools to summarize, but so the questions, I feel I need to tweak the summary in the end to make it sound
Yeah,
normal.
for sure.
So do you prompt it in a certain way? Do you how to make it sound like human-like, or do you reflect the tone and register of the discussion? Or should we say that this is a ChatGPT summary openly? So what is your approach about this?
Mm. Well, even if it's a ChatGPT summary, the prompt will influence how it's summarized. So for each one of my courses, I set it up as a project on ChatGPT, not just going cold. And then if I'm saying, right, here's my master's in cognitive psychology, bring that up and tell ChatGPT to keep the memory of that. And then you can put quite detailed briefing in about the course, the number of participants, where they're from, the kind of tone that you want. And so I generally will say to people, I did the initial summary that way. And then there'll be things you'll definitely add to it. You always will. Make sure you also make sure that you might see something somebody's posted that you thought was really good that ChatGPT wouldn't pick up, so you put that in. So yeah, but you can tell them initial summary because you're modeling it for them when they become teachers themselves. But have it tell ChatGPT everything you possibly can. Tell it what sort of tone you want, but don't just post it without thought, But often, it does get you a long way. It does get you a long way. It does save you time. And the students are quite tolerant of that, I find.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Yes, so we will have another Q&A in the end. So please think
We're
in
going
the.
to move on. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie.
So as promised, I'm going to talk now about activities. Now, the five-stage model was researched as what's called a grounded model. In other words, we looked at the lived experience of a very large number of learners online in the early days, and then we summarised how they benefited, what sort of support they needed, and that's what ultimately turned into the five-stage model. But when I published my first book on it, lots of people liked it and tried it, but the main feedback I got was that we needed also more of a design task of how to incorporate, activities at each of the five stages. And I was lucky then, I got a grant. And so I used the best of cognitive science, the best of what's understood about peer learning. And that's what brought the concept of activities. So you need to understand the five-stage model first. And then the idea of activities makes it very easy to put the right kind of activity in each of the five stages. And some of you will have experienced this as a learner and some as a teacher, I know. But it really does make you fly. It really is a growth activity for you. And so it works like this. This is the basic concept. Again, there's more on YouTube. I've put one of my YouTubes on there. There's more on my website. And I'm going to send you the template at the end of this. It'll be sent out to you as well. So some of it is a little bit counterintuitive. So you might need to listen fairly carefully to this. So I'm going to start off on the right-hand side. The very first thing you do is to put a purpose for why they're learning this. Not the whole purpose of the course, but why you're doing this particular activity. And this is a really good thing for you as well, because if you can't see an absolute purpose for it, then don't do it. So it's really got to be super purposeful, and it can be any purpose, but it's got to be couched in a way that the students will appreciate it. And that depends a little bit on the 5-stage model, as well. And it will be obviously an output on the content, but it also will show them that they're gradually learning to learn this way as well. So that's what I call purposeful. Put that up front. And then you need to make sure that whatever they're doing will align with feedback. It'll be easy to give feedback on something relevant, not the whole of the course, but something relevant. So it's this idea of alignment. It doesn't have to be assessment. Do not make the mistake of assessing every contribution. That is a mistake. You'll get a load of rubbish. Yes, me too, and all that. But it should be obvious you've got a way of giving feedback. And then this is important. All the instructions should be in one message. It's not great big long instructions. It's do this next, and clear timing. And I'll say a little bit more about that. So this is your basis of your activity, and this is your thinking to start with. And then on the left-hand side, on this side, it's what you're actually going to develop. So where the question was earlier, how can I use something of one of the stages? It's what we call a spark. Now, this may be a bit different to you. It's a spark to start the students learning. It may be a spark to start the dialogue. It may be a spark to light the fire that they want to take part. It may be a spark of motivation. So you will find that you need to give a bit of thought on that. It might be a little video, it might be a quotation, it might be a tiny scenario, something small. But it's a spark to start things going. It is not everything you know about the subject, not at all. It's for them to start learning. And then this next bit where it says individual contribution and then participation is also quite important. You want every learner to do something and contribute something as a result of the spark. So it means you need to give them a small activity that they do on a one-to-one basis. Now, I'm sure both as learners and teachers, you've had the experience of every activity that's put up, maybe a discussion board or all the other sorts of things that we do these days, where 2 or 3 people get going and then, you get frustrated because nobody else joins in. The individual contribution needs to happen first, so they're already engaged. And then there'll be a second stage where people work together. Now, it can be something very simple, like you could set up a Padlet, everyone puts a contribution and everyone responds to that. Or you could have people working in pairs as you would in a class situation, and then build up and snowball to bigger and bigger. There's all sorts of ways you can do it, but try and remember individual first, then participation. And then the participation would depend on what stage of the model you're at, but it can be something big or small where they work with more than one other. And that will prepare them to understand this as workers for something for themselves. And then the summary and feedback is what you do as teachers. I mentioned before that there's weaving, there's summarizing. You always do a summary, and that closes off that activity. You don't leave these going forever. They have a start and they have a finish, and the feedback is given then. So if you haven't taken part, you've missed out and you're on to the next one. And the timing is very important. I'll explain the timing for you. I hope that gives you a broad idea. Now, this is what it looks like if you do it as a template. And this is what I've sent you. So there's a number. You always do things in a sequence online. I'm sure you know this, that the sequencing is important. So say you were doing, I'm just trying to look what example I've shown you. I'm not sure. So the example I'm giving you is in the socialization stage. Because I'm not a language teacher, so I couldn't do complicated things, but I did something I thought would give you a rough idea of how to do it. So it's number 2. And then you might have more than one that week. So it will be week 2, activity 1 or 3 or 4. I mean, I run courses that are just 30 activities gradually building up with nothing more, but it is important there's a sequence. You want a title. Do not put boring titles up. Ideally, turn into tabloid journalists and put cookie titles, or ask ChatGPT to think of an enticing title. So you might need to go back to that. But once you've got a title, purpose I've already talked about. Really motivating to take part. When you do this, you'll get this, or this will help you with the quiz this week, or this will help you to get your project sorted out. It's something that really appeals to the student. And every time you write it, you think of the student sitting in front of you, that you're writing it for them. Then the next one, as you can see, is a task summary. Write that last. So when you do it, first of all, leave that to last. So just at the beginning, there's just a little bit, just as I did at the beginning of this webinar, I just put a few things up that we were going to cover. That will go in there, but obviously you've got to write the rest. Then your spark. So you might early on want to use a given video. You might want to use a fun quote. Try and make it relevant to what the activity is, but not too deep, something that would be motivating to get people start. Then the individual contribution, then the group participation. And then, and don't forget this, your intervention comes next. So they will know on a certain day, at a certain time, you're going to be coming in and you will have looked at their output. So with the individual and participation parts, you want an output. So don't just say, right, think about. They need to post something, even if it's quite small, so that you can see what they've done. Schedule and time, there's 3 parts to it. There's when it starts and when it finishes, how long you anticipate it taking the learners, and particularly when you'll come in and close it. Now, it may sound a bit pedantic, but I promise you, if you do that, you'll get much better engagement, much better participation. And then what I do generally with the activity is just put something on the bottom to say what I expect them to do next. So this next one might be a little bit difficult for you to see, but I have again sent this to you. So they're just reminders of each one of those. So the activities and the enticement. We know that if you've got an enticing title, the students are even very much more likely to open it. You know, we're talking about the difference between 40% participation and 90% participation, just if your title's good. The purpose, I've just given you some examples to get you started here, but if you complete this activity, you will be able to understand better how to find it essential for the assignment. So use verbs and link directly with your outcomes. And you can see the task summary. So I'm what's in italics as they come back, but most important, 1 question or task per activity. If you've got lots and don't list, 3 things I want you to do, it'll get too muddly. Put them in 3 separate activities. Brief instructions on how to take part and what to do. And then when you've written this part, you'll see whether it's self-contained, because that's the idea. So think spark to light the fire. I was teaching in Finland a couple of weeks ago, and they kept staring at me and saying, what are you talking about? Spark. Apparently, northern Finland, spark is a vehicle for deep, slow snow. I didn't know that, so I learned one little word in Finnish, which was spark. But I'm thinking about it as striking the match, getting things going for the students. Interesting little starter, link directly with the topic for what else you're teaching. And if you've got really good learning resources that you like, put them in there, that, you know, rather than, so it's not you talking for ages like I'm doing now. Right. Individual contribution, clear instructions to what he or she should do in response to the spark. Specifying what media and a wiki, discussion board, audio file, whatever, and by when, i.e. the day and the time in their time zone. Tell them the length of contribution expected, you know, like 100 words, 200 words, 2-minute video, 2-minute podcast, whatever. And in your actual activity instructions, create a link so they can do that. I don't know what learning management systems you're offering, but you can generally do that now. And then the next is participation. Request response from an individual to others. Tell them what kind of response, how long, by when. Learners will come online to see if others have read and responded. So that's what I was saying, like the ticks on social media. So you've got to build in an opportunity for that to happen. And then create a link for this part of the invitation for posting the response, whatever that is. And when you start this, it doesn't need to be big things. It can be quite small. You'll see from my example. But as you go up through the model, it can be more complicated. And then this is you, the tutor, the e-moderator, the teacher, clearly indicate what the human will do and when. Give teaching points, close the activity, and so on. This is your time. So in a way, your role as the e-moderator is to design this and then come in at the end. Do not go in at every stage and keep saying, oh, please do this, do this. They've got a very clear set of instructions. And then the schedule and time, the total calendar time. In other words, there's usually this sort of thing, something like this will be a week. So the total calendar, it starts on Monday and it finishes the following Monday when you might do a synchronous session, or they know that your summary will come then, and the completion date. But you also need to estimate the total amount of study time that they're required. So in that time, they're expected to find 2 hours in 2 lots so that they can work out their own time. Now, some people will do it, you know, at different times of day, but you're accommodating that as long as they know when it's got to be finished by. And then I say, if you can, link them to the next action if you've got them online. Sometimes you're getting people coming in their lunch break or the coffee break, something like that. Okay, as I say, I've sent you that so you can look at that later, and I'm going to work through an example now. Is everybody still alive? Yeah. Still with me? Thanks. Okay. Lovely. Thank you. Now, I'm not a language teacher, so I made this up. So you know, there might be bits that are wrong, but I've just tried to think of something to try and make this a bit real and a bit easier for you actually to follow. Right, are you ready? So I'm going to go through that now with an activity, second week, number 1. Idioms unplugged, culture, language, and connection, right? So the purpose, it's quite nice to use little icons like this, is to recognise the challenges of teaching idioms to global learners, collect a mini bank of idioms and teaching strategies contributed by peers worldwide, and reflect on how culture influences language learning. So it's quite a lot, probably. Maybe it's too much. You would know more, but this was the idea. And then my task summary was share one idiom from your own language or culture. They're all going to share one. Explain its literal and figurative meaning in English. Suggest a way to teach it. read and respond to at least 2 others' idioms, receive feedback. So this is the way I did it. So the spark, right? So I don't know whether you have these videos or you could probably all make one. So it's a short video, a couple of minutes, showing common English idioms illustrated visually. So you've got images. All right, the cat's whiskers, it's raining cats and dogs, a piece of cake. An East End Londoner, so I say these sorts of things all the time. And sometimes my international students say, Gilly, what on earth are you talking about? I know that. I know that. So I try not to, but I know that it's just part of the way I speak. And the video ends with the question, what happens when learners encounter idioms that don't translate literally? You can probably think of some better ones than this, but that was my example. When I got back from my holiday in Spain on Sunday night, I'd had a few days in Spain. It was 24 degrees and sunny when I left Alicante. And it was raining cats and dogs when I got to Stansted Airport, and only 13 degrees. So the people who were with me knew what I meant. Maybe somebody else wouldn't have looked for the cats and dogs. I don't know. But anyway, you know what I mean by this, I think. So it's quite nice if you can choose an example for your video that actually explains it a little bit, which is what I've tried to do there. It's raining cats and dogs. I was reading between the lines, meant that I was trying to understand it a bit more. Spill the beans. No two ways about it. Hold your horses. My daughter's a very keen horse rider, and we're always saying hold your horses to her if she's going on about them. And the cat's whiskers means something special. Yeah, I'm sure you know that. Anyway, so the individual is given instructions to post an idiom in the idiom wiki, where you can put words, and it's always a good idea to structure it. So list your names of your learners, put individual contribution in the next column, and contribution to others after that. And then when you go in as the moderator, you can lift all that and easily summarize it. So post one idiom in the idiom wiki from your first language or culture that's difficult to translate directly into English. Explain its literal meaning and its figurative meaning, and suggest one way you might teach it. So everyone's making a little, easy contribution. So that would be your individual, and it will build up. You'll find if you've got the wiki builds up really quite quickly. You can do it with, it doesn't really work so well this in a discussion forum, but you could do it with Padlets or whatever technology you've got. I find a little wiki set up, or a Google Doc with a bit of structure works well. And then when that's finished, you read at least 2 other participants' idioms and comment briefly. I'd sort of say 100 words, no more, whether there's a similar expression in your own language or culture, and put one suggestion how this might be taught to make it more engaging or learner-friendly. I'm addressing this, I'm assuming they're teacher educators, but of course you could do it with learners as well, just as well this. And then it'll be your turn. So we might be a week later, you've got this massive thing. We even summarize the contribution. So I asked a language teacher of mine to try this out for me, and she said it did work. And she said what she did at this point was group it into animals, weather, food, common things that everyone could relate to. And then highlight the responses that were the cultural diversity, where it didn't mean anything in the other language. And then just try and draw attention to creative teaching methods and invite participants to try. I hope with this, most of you could try this out for yourself and give you an idea of how it worked. The big advantages of activities, you can take one little thing out that didn't work and put another in without having to redesign the whole thing for the next group. Now, timing. The colleague I asked to try this out, this was the timing she told me worked in practice. First time you did it, obviously you'd have to estimate. Watching the video and an individual response took them 45 minutes, which was more than I thought. but it was worth it because they were thinking. And then reading the responses of others and commentating, another 45 minutes. It's quite a lot of time is spent on it, but it's their time, not yours. And then reading the teacher's comment or what she had. I don't know whether you do this. She had a synchronous seminar at the end, and they all talked about it in class, you know, as now. And she allowed 30 minutes for that. So it was 120 minutes over 7 days, but that's learner time. And when they wish to do it. So that was my worked example of the utilities framework. Now I'm going to stop and go to any more questions about this. I can go back if I've gone through it too quickly. So it's actually over to you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gilly. So I was taking notes, so all very really. So there are also some questions. Yes. One question, maybe you can tell us again. Question was, how long did you make the study of activities? First time I've heard. So one comment was,
it was actually a 3-year research project between year 2000 and 2003, and it ended with the publication of my activities book. If any of you want to read the books or I've got access to them, make sure you get the latest because they've all got various editions since then. So there's been 2 editions, 3 editions of e-moderating and 2 of activities. I've not published anything new recently because I do the website and the YouTube videos now. So if you want the really up to date, the website's got quite a lot of up to date or last couple of years, people trying out activities in all different contexts and so on. So that followed the 5-stage model, which was in the early days, and the activities was slightly later, but most of what I've done since then is apply it to different technologies. I think you could all see how you could apply it to whatever you've got to use. It's quite a workable framework in that way. Is that okay?
yes, definitely. And another question, how can e-moderators effectively balance between facilitating learner autonomy and providing sufficient guidance, especially in contexts where learners have varying levels of digital literacy? Also, another question was in contexts where learners are not used to working in collaboration. So how can we facilitate that balance between autonomy and guidance?
Well, they're really, I understand that, cultures vary enormously on this and everyone's on a journey at the moment. But I'd say, and I'm starting to sound like a broken record, use the 5-stage model. You can't just demand that they collaborate. You can't just insist that they do. You need to take it slowly and give them small activities to do and gradually build it up. So the 5-stage model will enable you to do that. And in doing it, you need to answer the earlier question, you need to let them know that you're still there, but you will be commenting on what they've achieved rather than doing a dump of everything they need to know. And that is about autonomy. That is respecting people's need to, gradually understand things, try them out for themselves, linking it to their own cognitive maps and making it meaningful for them. So, and I imagine a lot of people, find it quite shocking when they first find that the teacher's going to come in at the end, not the beginning of the activity. But this has been very, very carefully designed to enable them to gradually get the idea of that. So I haven't got one quick thing that you can do that will fix it. But I think respect that over time they will start to understand. And if you can get people to even understanding reflecting on what that experience was like for them by the end of your course, then you're doing them a huge favour for being able to learn in the future. And it's very, very common, and there's some videos on the YouTube website that where people have said, I actually didn't think it would work, but I gave it a try, and oh my God, it did. So just give it a go. Try some small things. The key thing, once you understand the 5-stage model, that you can try small activities out and see how they work. And as I say, use the template, because every line of that is actually geared to enabling the learners to be motivated to take part, and you're more likely to be successful that way. It's very common that people don't make the purpose clear. It's very common that they don't, they just assume people will know, and they don't. It's also very common that they're having them do a whole activity without any feedback. You must have really good feedback in every activity. They do that a few times and they'll start to get the idea. I think you can tell me. You can tell me whether that works, whoever's answered that question.
Yeah, definitely it does, yes. From my experience, for example, once I designed an activity which was really very complicated, challenging, it didn't work. And then I reflected on it. So it's about, yeah, as you say, trying and also following the frameworks that is already tried and tested. So, and reflecting on it. Sounds perfect.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can make it your own, but don't miss anything out. Yeah.
The stages are really very clear in terms of providing a model. So another question is about managing learning. So how do e-moderators maintain momentum throughout an activity cycle? Because one of the questions was about managing the behavior. So sometimes many activities start with high energy and enthusiasm, and then participation drops as the activity progresses. Do you have any final tips about this?
I'm not sure I've got anything more than what I've actually said, but I'm going to go back to this. There's all sorts of things built into this that are about maintaining momentum. Now, the first thing is to be absolutely clear when it starts and finishes. And that as it finishes, you as the teacher are going to be coming in and looking at what everybody else has done. They're not doing it. It's not, how some people see that being out there and not being able to see it. It's not like that at all. I don't recommend that you constantly go in and comment on what they're doing. But you could set up some AI prompts. Today is the last day for your individual contribution. Today's, there's half of the groups have already put their group contribution in, things like that. We do not think that putting marks for contribution works with activities, because there's too many other things that have been put in there. You can mark it for the output if you wish, the final output if you wish. And of course, that might work earlier on in the model. And the absolute, so many different things are about how much time it will take, which has to be an estimate to start with, the deadlines for it, those sorts of things. You usually find that the vast majority, with a reasonably well-designed activity, perhaps the second time you try it, when you've ironed out any problems, you will get the vast majority of your students completing that. So I don't think I've got any quick fixes that I haven't told you about.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's about following those sequences and reflecting, and there was also recommend. So it's a very complex role that needs an accurate plan of training with transversal competencies like the soft skills, hard skills of our 21st century. So totally agree with you. So we can continue, but times. So thank you so much, Gilly. Yes, it's been really very interesting. So and we shared all the supporting documents, handouts we mentioned. Yes.
Yeah, so that's my website, so my YouTube channel there. You know, I do encourage you to work together. You know, perhaps some of you are co-located or you regularly speak. And if some of you are starting to try out these activities, perhaps soon you could set up an area where people can put up what they've tried and how well it worked, so that you could build up a bank of them that people could share. You could just put an area, I mean, put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so people could indicate what level they've put it in, how well it worked. You know, you could really, from this, you could start to build up a really valuable bank of activity resources. And it is a matter of doing something different. And we're really in a very different world, and we're preparing students who may have very long lives, where, okay, you're teaching them language, but their understanding of working together, becoming autonomous, working across cultures, being sympathetic to other cultures, will actually probably be the most important skills that they will acquire. So it's worth it. It's what I say, it's worth it. The reason I put these silly fish up is that this was something my own students gave me, and said my surname is Salmon, which of course is a fish. And they said we were all swimming that way, but we're all going in the way of the goldfish now. So I quite liked that image that they sent me. When you're using activities, images help, you know, because they're a bit fun. So try and use simple images or get AI to find them for you.
That's very nice. Thank you. Thank you so much, Judy. Well, we hope you have all picked up useful ideas to reflect in your context. So as I mentioned, we have uploaded some documents that Gilly mentioned in this session, and the recording of the webinar and the slides will be available on Teaching English in the next couple of days. And the link to the certificate will be provided in the thank you email. And don't forget to subscribe to our monthly newsletter for teacher educators. And our next session will be on Tuesday, 18th of November, on bringing today's world into the classroom. So it's about gaming informed ways to make classrooms more engaging. So please remember to register for this webinar as well. And we very much hope to see you all again. And Gilly, we hope to see you all. We hope to see you again in another session, I hope. Thank you once again for this.
Bye. Good luck, everyone. You can email me if you want to let me know how you get on. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.